In Venezuela, new flight carrying repatriated migrants arrived at the Simón Bolívar International Airport in Maiquetía in the state of La Guaira through the Back to the Homeland government plan. Teachers' unions in Panama are holding a 48-hour national strike against the approved Law 462 of the Social Security Fund. Nations worldwide are reacting to the newly announced set of tariffs imposed by U.S. President Donald Trump on Wednesday. Hello and welcome to From the South. Mara Marrero from the teleSUR headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. We'll be with the news. Stay with us. In Venezuela, a new flight carrying repatriated migrants arrived at the Simón Bolívar International Airport in Maiquetía in the state of La Guaira through the Back to the Homeland government plan. The flight arriving from Mexico was received by the Venezuelan Minister of Interior Relations, Justice and Peace, Diosdado Cabello, who welcomed the 313 people, among them 151 children, 102 women and 60 men. In this context, Cabello emphasized that the different security and child protection agencies, as well as medical agencies, were present at the airport. The flight is part of the government's commitment to the safe return of nationals, aims a massive deportations campaign being carried out by the U.S. administration of Donald Trump. Likewise, the Minister of Interior Justice and Peace of Venezuela, Diosdado Cabello, highlighted that this flight, 1,610 Venezuelans have already returned to the country under the Return to the Homeland plan.
It is a flight that, with this one, 1,610 Venezuelans have been transferred from the United States, because those who are in Mexico are not really in Mexico. They returned from the United States to Mexico, and we have been doing that work, and we hope to see the regularization. As of last week, they have already started to regularize. There is a flight today from Mexico, then there is a flight where we are going to take the comrades in Honduras directly from the United States to Honduras, and tomorrow morning, as the President announced, there will be a direct flight from the United States. The Return to the Homeland Plan, a policy of the Venezuelan state so that the Venezuelan citizens, wherever they are, can return to our country with the guarantees of a state that takes care of them, with the guarantees of a state that reviews each case individually and in a particular way.
In this context, Diosdado Cabello demanded El Salvador to return the kidnapped Venezuelans.
We continue to demand, from here in Venezuela, raising our voices, demanding that the government of El Salvador, which has kidnapped, the government of El Salvador, of Mr. Nayib Bukele, that has kidnapped the Venezuelans, return us our children, the children that you and the government of the United States had kidnapped there, in an arbitrary manner. They have not committed any crime in El Salvador. Not a single crime. They cannot be judged in El Salvador because they have not committed any crime in El Salvador, and, if they committed a crime in the United States, it is up to the government of the United States to judge them, to submit them to the justice of the United States. It is the arbitrariness of those who assume themselves to be the owners of the world.
Salvador experts and activists denounced that the Trump and the Bukele administrations had been violating international human rights law by withholding information about the Venezuelan citizens kidnapped in that country. Organizations such as Cristo Sal, with over 25 years of experience in the defense of human rights, points out that Washington and San Salvador conceal law official data on the Venezuelans deported from the U.S. and incarcerated directly to the secret prison. They further label such actions as flagrant violations perpetrated by both governments, which might be judged as forced disappearance, acts of torture, and even extrajudicial execution offenses. Argentine President Javier Milei will face a class action lawsuit in the U.S. for his involvement in the Libra crypto scam. The former federal prosecutors for the Department of Justice, Timothy Traynor, will file the class action lawsuit in federal court in New York. The president is accused of being a necessary participant in the fraud involving the Libra cryptocurrency, which was prompted on February 14. The complaint alleges that he was instrumental in manipulating the market, causing an estimate of $250 million in losses to investors. The former prosecutors argues that the president's influence and his public announcements were crucial. The lawsuit not only seeks justice for fraud and market manipulation, but could also invoke the REACH Act, which targets organized crime activities. In Chile, workers' union organizations called for a national strike to demand better working conditions and quality of life for the disadvantaged sectors. The Workers' Unite Center informed that a date of mobilizations will take place in all the regions with the participation of different social sectors, including at least 16 organizations affiliated to the Federation. Protests are carried out as a pressure measure to build up better the development of the country and not as an economic indicator. The call also demands the negotiation of a 40-hour work week in the public sector. Teachers' unions in Panama are holding a 48-hour national strike against the approval of 462 of the Social Security Fund. The strike, called by the Teachers' Action Front, rejects the government's promoted initiative, which establishes the privatization of the public entity that severs retirees and the thief of its resources to be handed over to the banks, in addition to raising the retirement age and thus delaying the access to pensions. For the duration of the strike, parents were asked not to send their children to school. The action is also aimed at denouncing the relocation of shelters to other companies in the Rio Indio area, where the government wants to build a reservoir, allegedly for the benefit of the Panama Canal, but without the consent of the indigenous peoples and peasants. Let's take a very first break, but remember, you can join us on our TikTok account as teleSUR English, where you'll be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Stay tuned for more news. Welcome back to From the South. Following U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff measures, stock markets around the world plummeted. In Europe, the Milan Stock Exchange fell by 2.84%, followed by the Frankfurt Stock Exchange with more than 2.77 percentage points, while the Paris Stock Exchange fell by as much as 2.14%. Meanwhile, in Asia, the Tokyo Stock Exchange fell by as much as 2.77%, while in Hong Kong, it lost 1.69% of its value. Experts estimate a possible increase of at least 3% in global inflation, in addition to fueling the uncertainty in the international economy. Trump decides to impose tariffs of at least 10% on all countries and a higher percentage on partner countries, declaring a trade war on the world with higher import taxes in the century. The president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, dedicated a few minutes in the middle of an agenda that prioritizes the growth of the country and the rescue of Venezuelan migrants persecuted by the regional extremists to refer to the newly announced U.S. tariffs. In this regard, the head of state assured that Washington has declared economic war on the world with the help and alliances in the specific case of the Bolivarian nation and of extreme right-wing leader Maria Corina Machado. He denounced how those radical sectors promote foreign punishment and damages against Venezuela. In this context, the president emphasized that while some impose or promoted sanctions against the country, the government's economic plan for the strengthening of production, supply, and export in different sectors is moving forward. On Thursday, during her morning press conference, the Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum welcomed the exclusion of her country from the new set of U.S. tariffs imposed on several countries. Sheinbaum highlighted good relations her nation has built with the government of the U.S., which she stressed is based on respect for their people and their national sovereignty, which she states allow for Mexico to avoid additional tariffs. It is worth recalling that President Trump previously introduced a 25% tax on Mexico's exports, but explained that Mexico will not have to pay tariff on the good included in the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement, the TMEC. In this regard, Mexican Secretary of Commerce Marcelo Ebrard added the country will ask for better conditions for aluminum and steel.
En el caso de México,
in the case of Mexico, there are no additional tariffs. Nor for Canada, although in the case of Canada they make some specifications. And that is good for the country, for Mexico. Although some do not want to recognize it. This is due to the good relationship that we have built between the government of Mexico and the government of the United States, which is based on respect.
And on Thursday, also in response to the U.S. economic measure, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney announced 25% tariff on all vehicles imported from the U.S. that are not compliant with the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement on Free Trade.
Announcing that the Government of Canada will be responding by matching the U.S. approach, with 25% tariffs on all vehicles imported from the United States that are not compliant with CUSMA, our North American Free Trade Agreement, and on the non-Canadian content of CUSMA-compliant vehicles from the United States as well. Our tariffs, though, unlike the U.S. tariffs, will not affect auto parts because we know the benefits of our integrated production system. And they will also not affect vehicle content from Mexico, who is respecting the CUSMA agreement.
In this context, on Thursday, the government of Spain unveiled its plan to implement a $15.6 billion spending package to mitigate the negative effects of the newly imposed U.S. tariff.
We are going to deploy our plan that we have called the Trade Response and Relaunch Plan, designed to mitigate the negative impacts of this trade war initiated by the Trump administration and weave a shield to protect our economy, so that if the storm is unleashed, Spain will have a double umbrella, the European umbrella and the Spanish umbrella. This plan is going to mobilize a total of 14.1 billion euros.
For his part, Irish Premier Michael Martin underscored the unjustified nature of the new tariffs, touching on their negative impact on the people, vowing to reflect on a response to the measures together with the European Union partners.
I deeply regret the United States' decision to impose 20% tariffs on imports from across the European Union. We see no justification for this. More than 4.2 billion worth of goods and services are traded between the European Union and the US daily. Disrupting this deeply integrated relationship with tariffs and increased protectionism benefits no one. Tariffs drive inflation, hurting people on both sides of the Atlantic, and they put jobs at risk. We will now reflect with our European Union partners on how best to respond. It is important that our response is considered and measured.
On Thursday, China urged the United States to immediately cancel the tariff measures imposed against it and warns of a forceful response in defense of the country's interests. Through a communique, the Minister of Commerce denounced that the Trump administration's measures violate international trade rules and seriously harms the legitimate rights and interests of the parties involved. Beijing demanded the repeal of the unilateral measure and to choose the diplomatic path to resolve the differences. The Chinese office assured that its partners in the U.S. have expressed deep concern and strong dissatisfaction. President Donald Trump, as he did in his first term, imposed a 54% tariff on products from China. In this context, the Chinese Ministry of Commerce spokesperson He Jiadong assured these measures hindered the production and supply chain between the United States and other regions and called on the Western government to jointly resolve concerns through dialogue.
The U.S. measures artificially sever the production and supply chains between the U.S. and other regions. This neither contributes to the so-called national security nor helps the U.S. domestic industry. It will only highlight the unilateralism, protectionism, and bullying nature of the U.S. measures. The economic and trade departments of China and the U.S. have been maintaining communication. China is willing to exchange views with the U.S. on important issues in the economic and trade fields of the two countries and resolve their respective concerns through equal dialogue and consultation.
Let's take a last break, but before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English, where you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the most recent events. Financial breakdown going. Welcome back. On Wednesday, a family of 12 members was wiped out in a massacre carried out by the Israeli genocidal occupied in Gaza after they unilaterally breaking the ceasefire. According to the civil defense report, the family had gone to visit close relatives, and within minutes of returning to their rent house, the occupying forces shot them. Witnesses confirmed that the Quad family had survived the genocidal operation together for a year. Like all residents of Rafah, they suffered numerous displacements until this Wednesday when the occupation army killed them all. After more than 36 airstrikes on civilian areas in Yemen, Houthi forces respond by attacking the USS carrier Truman. The spokesman of the Yemeni armed forces, Yahya Sari, reported that the allies of the Israeli genocidal operation attacked residential areas in the province of Zana and Sada, without specifying a number. Confirmed that there were numerous deaths and injuries. The operation against the U.S. aircraft carrier also hit another warship in the Red Sea. The officials reiterate that nothing will make them back down in their determination to support the Palestinian cause. This Thursday, Prime Minister Viktor Orban, Chief of Staff Gerd Giulias announced that Hungary has decided to withdraw from the International Criminal Court. The measure was taken after the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, who has an arrest warrant from the court for genocide against the Palestinian people, arrived in Hungarian territory on a state visit. The Hungarian Prime Minister called the order against his counterpart outrageously ransom and cynical, adding that his country firmly supports Israel and condemned any attempt to politicize international institutions. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and the permanent U.S. representative to NATO, Matthew J. Whitaker, arrived on Thursday in Brussels to hold talks on security and defense affairs with European NATO members. European leaders will attend the upcoming meeting with U.S. officials in their attempts to defuse tensions raised by tariffs impositions and funding cuts. Earlier on, Ms. Land, in statements, Whitaker urged the alliance to prioritize peace, security, and rebuilding Ukraine, while the authority ensured that NATO's viability will rely on each ally to endure further shared. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump negotiated with Russia's ceasefire deal on Ukraine and cut military provisions and funds to Europe. The leader further aims at Canada's and Denmark territories for their regions. In addition, Trump imposed tariffs to NATO states as well. Moving on, in Myanmar on Thursday, the second batch of disaster relief supplies from the Chinese government arrived in Yangon as part of an effort of 8 efforts following the recent earthquake. The package includes tents, blankets, biscuit, bottled waters, and other essential materials. The first batch of relief supplies offered by the Chinese government reached Myanmar on Sunday. In this context, it is worth highlighting that multiple Chinese rescue teams have arrived in the country disaster-stricken areas, working with local responders to search for survivors. The magnitude 7.9 earthquake that hit the nation on Friday has reportedly left the toll of 3,085 and 4,750 people injured and 341 reported missing people. Also in Myanmar, the Russian rescuers deployed by the Ministry of Emergency Situation are providing medical help to earthquake victims. The brigade has set up a mobile hospital where more than 65 injured people were sought help in the last 3 days, also tackling the outbreak of chronic diseases in the route left by the seismic. Russia deployed more than 120 rescue workers, ambulances, and equipment to Myanmar's capital to assist in search and rescue operations following the quake. And we have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our socials. We're on Facebook, on X, and on Instagram as well. For telesur English and from the South, I'm Ana Marrero. Thank you for watching.